Before I share what I have to share, I want to acknowledge that there is a young girl, a young person at the center of this who we have failed as a community. And that this young woman, I want to be really clear that fighting for justice for Frank does not in any way negate the pain that this young girl is experiencing. And so as we advocate for justice, we also need to hold her and her humanity in our care at this time. That there is absolutely no way, knowing what I know, that I could have slept at night without bringing this into the light. Last March, the Board of Education was notified of a procedural investigation that was beginning against one of the employees. It did not require any action on our part, and like many things that are shared with us, they are shared with us for information purposes only and not for action. Fast forward to last December, we received notice that a conclusion had been reached in this particular investigation and that we would be receiving a report summarizing those findings. We received that report 24 hours in advance of our December 2023 Board of Education meeting. And before we ever arrived at our executive session, some of us communicated with one another, noting the strange way in which this report had been written, I'll say. And as somebody who has been in public education for 20 years, I have had to read educational investigation reports time in and time out. There was something wrong with this report. Not only in the sloppily way it was written, but in the fact that the evidence was so highly inferential and the conclusions were so inconsistent and in some cases contradictory that before we even arrived at our executive session, we knew something was up. Once we arrived at executive session in December 2023, the first thing on the agenda was this report, and it was our board attorney notifying us that just prior to the meeting, he had received a call from the third-party investigator notifying us that this report needed to be recalled, that the report had not followed chain of command. The investigator had not submitted the report for review and approval before it had been submitted to the board attorney and subsequently the Board of Education for review. The investigator was so concerned about his subordinate's job that he said a new investigation needed to be taken place in order to be able to validate and ensure that there was an ethical procedure that had taken place. So as the Board of Education, we were told to stand down and disregard this report entirely. I want to repeat that. We should have never received this report in December. As a precautionary measure, let me back up. Some of my colleagues did not like the directive we were told to stand down. Some of my colleagues wanted to act on that report that very evening. In fact, 3 colleagues put up for a vote that we put a hand carry resolution to terminate Frank Sanchez at the public meeting that night in December as a result of that report. We did not have the votes to do that. And so as a result of that, 2 of the outgoing Board of Education members said that they were prepared to take matters into their own hands. We moved on with our agenda. We communicated to the superintendent as a precautionary measure that he should notify DCP&P as a result of this, and also notify Maplewood PD, which is a compliance exercise that is required in any case like this when DCP&P is notified. I want to repeat that. Our acting superintendent notified Maplewood PD on the 22nd of December, the next day, because we directed him to as a compliance measure. That notification in no way, shape, or form triggered an investigation. It was an FYI. I know that because when a police department takes on an investigation, the district is no longer allowed to conduct its own investigation. And the district was allowed to begin its external third-party investigation as soon as January 2024. What we did not know is that board member Alyssa Malaspina took it upon herself sometime between the board meeting on the 21st and New Year's Eve to personally deliver the inactionable, flawed draft report directly to the Maplewood Police Department. And it was that action that spurred the investigation that ultimately led to charges and the arrest of Frank Sanchez this week. So where we are today is that an investigation, a proper investigation, has been completed, has been delivered to the superintendent and our board attorney. And while I am not privy to the contents of that investigation, what I do know is that investigation led the board attorney and the acting superintendent to confidently recommend that Frank Sanchez return to his post this coming Monday. And unfortunately, that was not to be the case, because unbeknownst to the district, a board member had taken it upon herself to deliver a faulty report to the Maplewood Police Department, usurping the actions of the district and ultimately not allowing justice and a fair process to take place. And while this is obviously such an unbelievably egregious example, it is not isolated. It is not disconnected from what we all saw play out last May. And it is not disconnected from what this community has seen play out in small ways for years. And when is it going to stop? This is not as simple as talking about us versus them board factions. We are talking about the very life of an educator who wants nothing more than to serve this community. So I beg of each and every one of you, please do not lose sight of this. This is going to be a long road. This is going to be a long process. And it's really easy to get distracted to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Please don't lose sight. Please demand that this Board of Education investigate and make public on the record what took place. And let's do whatever we can in our power to restore this wrong and get Frank back in the school building where he belongs. Yeah.